I'm visible. I was invisible, but now I'm visible. Well, thank you so much, Becky. Thank you so much to the 3% Conference, and thank you to everyone that's in this room. We have a great group today, and I hope we have fun. So today, I'm going to talk about courageous creativity, using your integrity in service to your imagination and creating positive change. But before we do that, I'm going to open this invisible door and bring you into my office. So come on in. My office is called the Peach Pit because of the peach-colored walls, the cozy, womb-like environment. I want everyone to feel welcome in my office, and the fact that I'm a child of the 90s and I loved 90210. And about once a month, I invite people into my office to brainstorm. And the invite is open to everyone across the company. We have engineers, we have editorial people, we have creatives, we have client services, and beyond. And in our space, we talk about ideas, we solve problems, and we share what's on our minds. And I have, in the Peach Pit, I often serve rosé if it's after 5. We'll have peach-flavored candies. And a key feature of the Peach Pit is this lovingly bedazzled buzzer, which is our no limitations buzzer. So if you're in a Peach Pit brainstorm and you bring up budget, you're going to get buzzed. If you're in the Peach Pit and you talk about time frame, you're going to get buzzed. And that's not because we live in some, la-la land where we don't have any, goals, we don't have metrics that we need to hit. It's just that I know that creativity is so fragile and that I have people in my space that don't all necessarily think of themselves as creative, and I want to create a space where they feel that their ideas are valued. And I start every Peach Pit out the same way, and I'm going to ask that we do that here today. We are tightly packed, so I'm hoping that there's no injuries. But if you're able to stand, please do. If not, you can improvise, use your voice. So just put your stuff on the floor. Try and give yourself a little room, and we're going to do a shakeout. Okay. Here's how it's going to work. So we're going to start with our right leg, then our right arm, left leg, left arm, and we're going to shake down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 4, 3, 2, 1, and down to 1. Don't worry if you get it wrong. I mess it up all the time. I'm not super coordinated. It's not about perfection. It's about getting our yayas out. So here we go. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You have to yell it out too. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Woo! Woo! How do you feel? I feel a little hot now. So why do we shake it out in the Peach Pit? We shake it out because play creates trust, because people are coming into my office from all different parts of the company, and I want them to know that I'm just as silly as they are, they're just as silly as I am, so we can leave those inhibitions at the door. And we shake it out to get out of our heads and into our bodies. I don't know what frustrating meeting someone's been coming from, and I just want them to be present in the space. I started us off out in the Peach Pit today because the Peach Pit represents 3 key tenets of courageous creativity for me. The first, be the most you. When you bring your unique personality to the table, you can transform a boring brainstorm into a Peach Pit shakeout. Friction creates sparks. In the Peach Pit, we talk about what's on people's minds, and often those are, the pressing issues of the day, and that can get uncomfortable. But we're kind of creating this space for those conversations to happen. And from that, really interesting things take place. And we also have people that have totally different backgrounds that work in different areas of the company. So when you have that, it really creates this magic. And the last, create the conditions for creativity. Creativity can be so elusive, and it's really important that you think about the stage that you're setting, how you're hosting these types of sessions so that it can come forward. So be the most you. Now that we've shaken it out together, I think I might as well introduce myself. Hi, I'm Piera. I grew up in a tiny town of 1,000 people in Maine. This is our town square. Friday nights were some kind of lit. And I grew up, so I grew up there, and when I was a teenager, my mom's best friend gave me a subscription to Sassy magazine. And Sassy magazine was like my window into this whole other world where a group of really iconoclastic, powerful women were creating content that showed me that weird was cool, and I just had this imagination of moving to New York and being part of this type of publication. And this was my girl group growing up, and I think I was able to find my people in Maine, even though I remember getting bullied for what I wore and who I chose as my date to prom. And when I was a teenager, I decided to move to New York. And while I was there, I started Refinery 29. And when we started Refinery 29, sort of the media landscape for women looked something like this. A lot of articles about how to please your man, how to get, how to slim down for summer, and a lot of content that was really based on exclusion and making women try and live up to this false idea of perfection, and the idea that to be perfect was to be tall, white, thin, straight, and young. And this wasn't something that that resonated with me, and I also had moved to New York and just really wanted to create something totally different. And we wanted to create for a new generation of women. We wanted to create for women and show women in all of their complexity, diversity, and strength. So this is an idea of the content that we create and who we create it for.
I'm 16 years old and I'm a professional motorcycle racer.
I am a cosmic sparkle kid who wants to live inside of a rainbow of love.
I want to inspire girls. Just believe in yourself.
We will be heard and we will be seen.
Not just trendy, it's not just a movement, it's literally life.
I think now is the time. I love what I do.
Be brave, be strong, have fun, and do it because you love it.
No Miami, but you can feel the heat. Tell them I'm a date, the good down the deep. Bottoms and trap when I hit the street. Me and Tuggy when it's on the downbeat. Tuggy when it's on the downbeat. Who that, Steph, none. Cold, no ice, bro, skin from the slum. Tell that boy say it might mean don't yell that when I get strapped. Run. Tuggy when it's on the downbeat. Down.
So our mission is to be a catalyst for women to feel, see, and claim their power, and really embrace that in all that we do. As we were starting Refinery 29, I got to this place where I had felt, I went to art school and kind of worked my way up, and I felt really comfortable in my role as a creative director. But I started to have to do a lot more management. I had to sit in these executive meetings where there were a lot of people from agency world and big corporate companies. And I got to this point where I felt comfortable as a creative director, but I felt very uncomfortable in my role as an executive. And what started happening was I would be sitting in these in these big conference rooms with people, and I don't know if you guys have seen Charlie Brown, but when they talk in like that adult like wah 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 wah, everything kind of sounded like that to me because people were just slinging jargon like crazy, and I really felt like I was like the kid at the adults table, and I started to feel really insecure, and I got to this point where I thought that maybe I wasn't the right person for my company anymore because I didn't understand what it was that was being said around me, and I felt like, well, I didn't go to school for this. I didn't have this exact training in my career, and maybe I don't have what it takes to do this job. And it was a really intense low point for me because on one hand I felt so proud of the company that I had built, that we were employing all these amazing people, we were doing this really important work. I'd never felt more creatively excited about the work that I was doing, but I really had so much self-doubt. But then I thought, you know what? I can't quit. That's not really an option for me. And so what I decided to do was I decided to take my strengths and bring them into this area that was uncomfortable to me. I decided to utilize my curiosity in these meetings, and so I just started asking, what does that acronym mean, and what do you mean by that statement? What do you mean by that question? Can you give me a little bit more information? And I was terrified. I thought, oh my God, the jig is up. Everyone's going to see, that I don't know what I'm doing. And what started to happen is when I asked these questions, I noticed that instead of people, rolling their eyes at me, people started leaning in and really listening to the answer. And after the meetings, people would come up to me and they'd say, "Thank you so much for asking that question. I had no idea what that person was talking about." And it really, it really unlocked something for me, which is, I think it's so important for us to know our strengths and to bring them into areas that are uncomfortable for us. So, if something doesn't fit you, it's not about just like, knowing who you are isn't just about like, this is who I am, and, I can't do this, this thing isn't for me because it's not who I am. It's about knowing your strengths and bringing them into unfamiliar territory. So for example, I also really applied that to negotiation. Whereas I used to think negotiation was kind of like, you pick up the phone, it's like, fuck you, my way or the highway, and you like slam down the phone. And I was like, that's not me. And then I realized that negotiation could be about storytelling, it could be about setting a vision, it can be about collaboration, it doesn't have to be this zero-sum game. And so that for me was just a revelatory thing that has helped me to continue to grow. So being the most you, knowing what makes you different and embracing it, even if it's not, what's in the norm, staying true to your values, knowing that if it doesn't fit, you can tailor it to fit you better, and knowing you're never done growing. Again, it's not about, something, this unfamiliar territory not being for you. You can always grow into these new areas. So another moment of friction in my career was as we started to scale the company and started to scale our content, we all of a sudden got to this point where people were telling me that the creative process was a bottleneck. And people were going rogue. They were like hiring their cousin who was a designer to do this deck. Like on the editorial side, there was just a lot of pressure to use stock photography because they didn't want to go through the creative process. And I was so frustrated by it. And I went out to drinks with a friend, and I was like, they keep saying that creative is a bottleneck, but we need to control the brand. We need to keep the brand tight. And I was doing this like wild gesture with my hands, and she was like, dude, take a breath, just relax, it's okay. And she's like, isn't it interesting that they're saying that creative is a bottleneck, and the motion that you're making and the words that you're using is like a throttling motion that is reinforcing the criticism of you? I was like, oh, what? It was just this revelatory moment. And so I really thought about that, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna like do this Jedi mind trick on them, and I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna talk about, creativity as the guardrails on the highway, and, you can drive as fast as you want, but our creative guidelines are the rails, so you don't drive off the road. And I approached it like I was gonna kind of like Jedi mind trick them into realizing that they were wrong and I was right. But what actually happened is it also helped me to realize what some of the realities of what they were saying, and the fact that I needed to change the way that I was thinking and operating as well. And this opened up this whole new world of how I approached working with other teams, how I approached kind of our creative process and putting those guidelines in place. And one of the ways that this applied the most was to our stock photography. So again, they were saying, going through the creative process, having to do a photo shoot for every single thing that we're doing, having to do a custom illustration for every single thing we're doing is not efficient. And so this was the type of imagery that was showing up on our site, because this is what the stock photography sites looked like at the time. And I was, the reason I was so upset was I was like, this doesn't represent who we are. As a company, our values are individuality, inclusivity, imagination, and I was like, this is just white women laughing into salad bowls. And so what I decided to do is I talked to our different editors. I found out where they were having pain points, and I talked to our photo team too about where were their pain points, where were there not the type of images on stock sites that we wanted to see. And so we started shooting our own stock photography assets. And it started so lo-fi, like we were had a bunch of colored tampons on a table, in the back of the office, and our photo intern was shooting them, or we were shooting our staffers. But over time it grew, and what we saw was that it totally transformed our site. It really solidified our visual identity, and it meant that a huge percentage of our audience can now identify a Refinery 29 image in our lineup. And it also, really helped us to do a better job of representing our diverse audience. And, after we did that, this is a project, so it started very lo-fi, and now it's something that, we have tens of thousands of images in our archive. We meet with our editors every month to think about where the boundaries of stock photography need to be expanded. And we decided, why should we just transform the look of our own site when we can actually transform the look of the industry? So we partnered with Getty Images to create the No Apologies collection. Any brand or editorial platform can use these images. And we called it No Apologies because we don't think women should have to apologize for who they are or what they look like. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think the idea that friction creates sparks is also about, embracing uncomfortable moments. And a very uncomfortable moment for many people was the day after the election in 2016. I felt really heavy going to work that morning, and I kind of had the feeling of, wanting to put on black and crawl into a hole. But a huge source of courage for me is in my role as a leader and in the responsibility I have to my team. And so I put on, instead of wearing black, I put on a pink power suit and went into the office, and I thought, how am I gonna, and everyone in the office was basically wearing black that day. People were crying. It was really intense. And I said, I can't, I think typically, a typical head of a company would just be like, well, politics doesn't have a place in the office, and we're just gonna forge ahead and just ignore that this is happening. But it really did not feel like that was the appropriate response for our office, which is 80% women and definitely very liberal skewing. And so I said, you know what, we actually, put the TVs on. We watched, Hillary's concession speech, and we did a session that was basically like a art therapy type session where I had everyone write down things that they were angry about, things that they were upset about, and then we shredded them, and then we talked about, okay, now what? What do we want to create? How are we going to serve our audience? How are we going to move forward? And we came up with a lot of different content and video series ideas from there. And one of the other things we decided to do was we were talking about how art can be a catalyst for change, how art is something that heals, that conveys messages. And so we decided to create this network of artists that we could utilize in different moments to talk about different issues. And that ended up being a network of artists. It was about 30 artists that we collaborated with for the Women's March to create artwork about the reasons that they were marching. And we've since used this same network for March for Our Lives, for Pride, for a lot of different important moments. And this artwork was, shared across social, and people marched with it in countries across the world. And it also, I think sometimes something like that, it seemed, now we know that the Women's March was a historically large march, but when we decided to do it, we had no idea if there would be backlash as a business with our clients to participating in something like that, to being very politically vocal. But what we've actually seen is that it's created a lot of space for us to help clients to have more of a voice, to stand for something. And we actually this summer worked with Unilever for their Unstereotype Alliance with Jessica Walsh, who we commissioned to create this flag representing their commitment to removing stereotypes from their advertisements. So I think that's, sometimes when when you feel that friction, I think our natural fight or flight response is to try and run away. But I think when you can combat frustration with imagination, think about that. Think about the difference in how your body feels when you're like clenched, like that throttling motion, or when, like you're kind of like flowing down the highway. Sometimes reframing the problem can unlock the solution. So thinking about the language, the gestures that you're making can actually help your mind open up to find something new. Embracing the uncomfortable, just kind of going head in when you feel like there's a moment that everyone is feeling but maybe aren't talking about. It's kind of a very fertile creative ground, and something that I think can really connect people. And you can do it. I always feel like, I can't do it. Well, I've done it. I'm up here doing it, and you can do it too. Okay, well, let's do something dorky then, since you guys like that. Okay, I'm going to say, you can do it, and you're going to say, I can do it, okay? It's a pep rally. You can do it. I can do it. You can do it. I can do it. You can do it. I can do it. That's right. So create the conditions for creativity. Again, creativity can be so elusive. It's important to know how to nurture it. So about a year ago, one of our creative directors came into my office, and she wanted to brainstorm with me a challenge that she was having. And so I sat down with her. She came into the Peach Pit, and she told me, what she was working on. And I just started firing off ideas. I was like, what if we did this with, and we brought this, this creative person in, and I was like, or we could do this. And I was just rattling off all these ideas, like feeling very loose. And I thought she was going to be really excited and grateful because I was having, all these ideas. But then she looked totally downtrodden, and she actually looked like she was going to cry. And I was taken aback, and I said, Stella, are you okay? What's going on? She sighed, and she said, well, you have all these great ideas, and that's nice, but when I had to brainstorm this, I couldn't think of anything. And sometimes I wonder if I'm creative enough for this job. Oh, I felt for her in that moment. I mean, who hasn't had a moment like that where you are under pressure, you fall short, and then you just go down a spiral of self-doubt? I certainly have, time and time again. And so I said, Stella, tell me, what were the conditions for your brainstorm? What was going on when you had to come up with the ideas? And she said, oh, well, our West Coast salesperson called me up and said, I need ideas by the end of the day. What do you got? I was like, okay. So basically, you're under the gun and someone's like, this is a stick-up. Give me all your ideas. And for some reason, your mind went blank. And I said, look, for me, I've learned that it's so important to create the conditions for my own creativity, and in a case like that, I would say, great, I would ask a lot of questions, and I would get off the phone as fast as possible to get into my own zone. And I've learned that for me, my creativity often comes from word association, like opening up a magazine and just trying to like riff on different words. It comes from seeing images. My whole office is filled with images and words, and I just can like look around and sometimes pull things. But the biggest source of creativity for me is sitting down with someone that I feel comfortable with, who just gets my creative juices flowing. And I said, Stella, you are routinely that person for me. I bring you in here all the time when I need help coming up with ideas. And so it's no wonder that you fell short when you were in the situation you were in, and I'm in flow in this situation, because they're just totally different. And I think it's so important, so often we beat ourselves up for those moments of deficiency and we fixate on them. But what if instead you think about that moment when you're on fire, when you have all these ideas flowing out of you, and you trace that breadcrumb trail back to what the conditions were in that moment, Was it that you listened to your favorite song on the way to work? Was it a certain coworker that really gets your creative juices flowing? That is equally important and probably arguably more productive way to think about your creativity. Oh, here's the ideas flowing out. Another condition for creativity that I saw in my first job, I worked at a really small magazine, and we would have these ridiculous brainstorms, and I saw this pattern emerge again and again and again and again. Someone would say something totally ridiculous, we would all bust out laughing, and then boom, the most brilliant creative idea. This was the type of thing that we would be brainstorming. We did a shoot where balloon people modeled the season's hottest accessories. And we'd be thinking about what the headline for it would be. And, someone would be like, latex lovers. And we'd be like, womp womp. And then, someone would say, Big Papa. And we'd all laugh. And then inflated egos. Ooh, that's good. And I think anyone that saw us in that brainstorm would think we were totally fucking around, that we were wasting time because they would get so silly. But what I saw was that looseness and that freedom really brought forth the ability to say something silly and ridiculous actually brought out much more creativity in that situation. So creating the conditions for creativity is really about knowing what works for you, remembering that laughter unlocks brilliance. It's actually also a stress reductor. There's a lot of science around it, so it's not just, goofing around. And doing it for someone else, I think often when you kind of recontextualize your problem around a service that you're doing or a problem you're solving for someone else, it also can help unlock a lot of creativity. So I brought you in one of my favorite spaces, and now I'm going to take you out in another favorite space that we created called 29 Rooms. And 29 Rooms also, the process of creating it also reflects these tenets of courageous creativity. We started the process by being the most us. We thought about when we were creating this event, 29 Rooms, it was our 10-year anniversary as a brand. We were thinking about how do we bring our digitally native brand to life in the real world? How do we give a gift to our audience that has supported us to this point? And how do we elevate the creative voices that bring our site to life every day? And we started by being the most us. We, did a brainstorm where we were thinking about all these different words that that relate to Refinery 29. We kind of started looking at art that we thought was, really experiential. And we had this idea. We said, what if we what if we create a space that actually has 29 different rooms, each that brings to life a different topic that we cover in our content and a different artist that we collaborate with to bring the space to life? And we were really excited about it. We were kind of inspired by all these amazing events that we'd been to over our time in New York. And so we pitched it to our executive team, and they were initially excited, but then they said, well, this looks really beautiful, but it looks like MoMA. How are we gonna have the artistic credibility to pull something like this off? This looks like a really, large-scale activation, but we're a digitally native brand. How are we going to drive people to the space and get, the foot traffic during Fashion Week? And they said, this looks really ambitious, but it looks expensive. How are we going to monetize an event like this? And then someone in the room said, yeah, maybe we should just do a cocktail party. Oh, no. But at this point, I know friction creates sparks. So I said, great feedback. We'll come back to you. And so we went back to the drawing board. We took all the feedback into account. We decided that, artistic credibility, well, we're elevating all these different creative voices, and we're going to bring in a lot of different artists of all different kinds that we collaborate with in our content, and they will, help this to have the relevancy that we want it to have. Monetization, well, why don't we actually make this an opportunity for brands to really bring their brand to life in a totally different, immersive way? And we decided that 6 of the 29 rooms would be branded. And foot traffic, we said, you know what? We see this trend in social media of people doing it for the gram, so we're going to use we're going to design this space in an extremely beautiful visual way that will give people a stage for creation, be a gift to our audience, and also drive people to our space. And we got the green light. So we created 29 rooms. It was this beautiful, artistic, visual feast for the senses. We saw 1 and 2 people share it on Instagram. And we heard people say, this event made me feel more creative. This event made me want to start dreaming bigger. And that's the thing about courageous creativity. When you are courageously creative, it creates more courageous creativity in the world. Courageous creativity is contagious. Thank you so much. You are courageous, you are creative. I wave my magic wand over you, and I wish you a great rest of the 3% conference. Thank you.